Hello and welcome back to the Aligned Living podcast. This is your host, Iesha Delune. Today we're going to be talking about your inner landscape in 3 ways. The first way is we're going to be talking about the 2 types of happiness, what I call surface happiness and soul deep happiness, which is that congruent, aligned, deep fulfillment. The second thing we're going to be talking about is how resourced and unresourced we are, having that as a skill set that you adopt and that you bring into your daily life. And the third part of today's episode is what I call the buffer. And I did refer to this in the last episode where we were talking about living in alignment with your care label. So if you haven't heard that, I invite you to check that out. So first things first. From my perspective, there are 2 types of happiness, and it's incredibly important to understand the difference between the 2. So surface happiness is great, but it will only ever provide a temporary reprieve from the dissatisfying situations in your life. And we can even burn ourselves out, pouring our efforts into surface happiness at the expense of really understanding the causes of our dissatisfaction or our depletion. So without this information of really understanding the difference between surface happiness and what I would now call congruence or, soul deep happiness, it's impossible to plot the path from living in congruent alignment with all that we truly are. And left unexplored, we can actually cultivate everything from unfulfilled potential all the way through to feeling really anxious and depressed. So let's define the 2 types. Surface happiness, from my perspective, is happiness that's created through a shift in your chemistry. So, and anything chemical is short-lived. So you might go do some exercise and you have some, happy hormones and happy chemistry inside your body. Or you might go out dancing with your friends if that's one of the things that you absolutely love doing and you feel happy for the evening. You can do things, you might have fabulous orgasmic sex with someone and you feel fabulous afterwards in the short term. The reason I want to describe the difference between that and that soul deep happiness is no amount of surface happiness, so no amount of going out dancing with your friends or exercising or looking at pretty sunrises, if that fills you with joy, is going to correct deeper incongruence. So if you back home are living in a relationship where you have really different values, where you're not being seen, heard, understood, or if you've got a work situation where you're totally misaligned, no amount of surface happiness fun will ever address those deeper misalignments. And this is why it's really important to understand the difference, because if you're scrolling around on social media, lots of people have got all sorts of advice for what we should do to be happy. And you'll see everything from, achieve those goals or spend more time in nature, or what you really need is more music, or what you really need is to dance with your friends. And all of those things are true, and they're usually, they're not true for everyone. All of those things have the potential to be true for you. They might be elements on your care label. But when we open to this idea of soul deep happiness or this congruent alignment, we don't want to leave parts of you behind. We don't want to always have to be topping up more surface happiness as an almost enlightened avoidance for those parts of our lives that we know we are experiencing unfulfillment, or we know that we are out of alignment with who we are. So I wanted to name that because it can be really confusing, and when we're doing all these things to make ourselves feel good, but we're still feeling this deeper current of incongruence. So there's 2 types of happiness. It's really important to be able to tell the difference. And the thing with surface happiness is that it'll run out. You get that shift in chemistry when you do the fun thing, but it will not last. Soul deep happiness, congruent alignment lasts. When we live from the inside out, when we live in alignment with all that we are, it gives us these incredible resources to go through life's ups and downs with less turbulence. We're less affected by life weather when we have that alignment in place. Obviously, I could speak for a whole lot longer about that, but I just wanted to introduce you to the concept because these are things that I'll be talking about throughout the podcast, and I wanted to have that language in the container between the two of us on this journey of aligned living. The second thing I want to talk about today is just introducing you to the wording of feeling resourced and unresourced. So again, I invite you, if you haven't listened to the last episode about the care label, I invite you to do that. But the essence is all of us are unique. The key to your lasting soul deep fulfillment is to be who you are. And that means that something like the top 3 activities of my greatest congruence that enliven and inspire and energize me might be 3 things that drain, deplete, or bore you silly. Right? So there's no set things that are the way of living your best life for every single person. But as we do things, activities, as we choose our priorities, as we set our goals, there are things that we can be doing in life that resource us. So this is the Iesha language as opposed to, they fill your cup is probably the more common language. But there's also things that we can do in life that drain us, that deplete us, that kind of stress us out, that require us to strap on this false persona to get through it. All of these things drain our resources. So this is cup emptying things. Now, when we're resourced, it lengthens our fuse, the time it takes between events happening and us losing our temper or us getting triggered or us being impatient or whatever it is that happens for you. When we're resourced, we've got that longer fuse. It's easier for us to be accessing compassion. It's easier for us to listen with understanding. We're generally less reactive to things that annoy us when we're unresourced. When we're unresourced, it's harder to be patient. It's harder to access compassion and understanding. Often just because of how the body is wired, when we're unresourced, it can be harder to focus on other people because we kind of need those resources to keep ourselves functioning. So I wanted you to have that language, resourced and unresourced, because this is something that you can tune into in daily life and start to notice. And this is homework that I give clients of mine when this is an issue. If they're regularly depleted, if they're unresourced, if they come to sessions with me going, I yelled at the kids, I hate it when I do that, or I responded this way in that situation and I don't like when I do that. I'm not like it all the time, but sometimes I just am. And when I'm listening to people, I'm wondering, okay, is this a resourced, unresourced issue? And it's really helpful to tune in. So when you're learning to live this way, it's living intentionally. It's a really good idea even at the end of every day to just check in with yourself on your resources. So if you like the kind of the full cup, empty cup idea, just going, how full's my cup? Because if you can get to the end of the day and go, I've still got energy left, that lets you know that, it's good feedback. Or if you get to the end of the day and you're like, cup empty, I've got no patience left, I've got no time left, I wish the rest of my night would disappear, that's also really good feedback. So this is just living intentionally, paying attention, because it generally takes time to get really depleted. And it can take time to build resources. So the more we can notice, the more we can care deeply about ourselves day to day, the more we notice what creates that high tide of energy or what creates that low tide of energy, and we can attend to it more moment to moment. It's much easier to attend to these things before they're huge, before they've blown out, before you've been unresourced for 3 months in a row and it's difficult, it's hard to get out of bed, or you don't want to see people anymore because you've got no energy left, or whatever happens for you. The way that we are when we're unresourced is also unique, the same as what we choose to do when we're resourced is unique to you as well. And that leads me to the third thing that I want to talk about today, which is very linked to the second one, and that's the idea that you have a buffer. So I want to teach you to notice this buffer. How much energy have I got? What's my buffer like? Because we can all live out of alignment for a while, but it will slowly deplete us. So the more that you can know about yourself, about what truly nourishes you and what drains, depletes, triggers you, the more you can plan your life accordingly. So let me put this into real life examples. Let's imagine that you're someone who is really energized by time alone and by silence. You have a family, you have a job, all of these things, but when you're living your best life, it includes time and space to, think your own thoughts in silence. Maybe you're an internal processor of your emotion, and having that time alone and quiet is what fills your cup, or one of the elements of filling your cup. And let's imagine next week you've got family coming to stay, and your co-worker that lives nearby is having their car serviced, so you're going to be driving into work together. There goes that alone time. You're going to come home to a house load of people, and you're having a birthday party celebration or a family wedding or something on the weekend. That's why everyone's staying for the week. So next week, you've got a full week where, other than maybe small moments of, using the, having a shower or using the bathroom, you're going to have absolutely no alone time. When you know that, when you know yourself enough to care about what you need, and you've got a week like that coming up, what I would recommend is you take the week after that and you make sure, make sure the week following that. So you go, okay, that week where I'm going to be kind of out of alignment in the short term with how I like to live my best life, what can I do the week following that? And what can I do in the week leading up to it that's just going to build my resources? So the more we know about ourselves, the more we can tune in and go, looking at my calendar, and attend to your buffer. Because life has weather, right? It has seasons, it has windy days, it has stormy days, and we have emotional weather, we have circumstantial weather. Speak to anyone who's towards the end of renovating their house. They've got some weather happening. They're generally out of, alignment with how they want to live, unless your happiness recipe includes, lots of tools and noise and strangers in your house and things like that. But generally that's not how people feel towards the end of a renovation where they're living in the home. So when you know that you've got a situation happening that's going to be buffer draining, you can get ahead of it, you can get intentional with it, you can get empowered with it, and you can make decisions about going, I've got this going on. How can I nourish myself so the buffer doesn't hit empty, so the cup doesn't empty completely? What can I do that's deeply aligned, that's going to support me to counterbalance what's going on? So that's just what I wanted you to have, that language. I wanted you to have these concepts because they're useful, and we don't necessarily talk about them all that often. So there's two types of happiness. Surface happiness is wonderful. Soul deep happiness is about that deep alignment and fulfillment. So just knowing that you can have a life plan from this moment on that actually attends to both. In thinking, rather than thinking the surface can actually fix that deeper stuff, it can't. And it just leads to dissatisfaction. And often it can be quite heartbreaking when people are pouring a lot of energy into their personal development, but they still feel that incongruence underneath, and they feel like what I'm doing isn't working. So knowing that congruence and living in alignment, that's a different type of goal setting. It's like learning a new language. It's learning to live embodied and aligned from the inside out. And that's completely different set of activities to those surface happiness, chemistry shifts, even though they can be linked. We can be resourced and unresourced, and this is an embodied state. Life is always giving us feedback, and our reactions are your embodied wisdom saying, yes, more of this, or, oh, please, no more of this. So when we can listen, we can A, choose more of what enlivens and inspires us, and B, be more aware of what drains and depletes us so we don't empty out completely. And last thing in our wrap up is just revisiting this idea of a buffer so that you can plan for when things are happening, you can plan for how to offset it, for want of a better word. Just knowing that you have energy. We're so amazing as human beings. We can live out of alignment in the long term, but in the short term, but if we stay there, we can create really long-term depletion, and that takes a long time to rebuild. So the time to work on it is that, daily check-in. If you're new to this as an idea, once you get really used to it, maybe a weekly check-in with yourself where you just kind of go, okay, how's my energy? How aligned is that feeling? When I look at what's on next week, am I like, ugh? Or am I yay? Or is it somewhere in between? If there are some things that are going to be difficult, what else can I put around that that's going to help me and support me get through that week? And not just get through it. We're not trying to get through life, but we're trying to support ourselves to be nourished, because that's going to make us a lot more enjoyable to be around. It's going to make it a lot more enjoyable to be us from inside of ourselves. It's going to allow us to access the more positive parts of our thinking and our patterns. And this type of effort is so worthwhile. Attending to your resources will improve not only your immunity and your health, but also lead into your relationships so that you're bringing energy to them. So I hope this helps. I want to thank you so much for listening. And from my heart to yours, goodbye for now, and I hope to see you again soon.